We'll be going live soon. We'll be going live soon. We'll be going live soon. I'd like to be able to unmute people.
It sounds like water.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can someone give me a high five so I know that they can hear me? Great. Okay. So welcome. It's an auspicious occasion, although maybe a little bit of a sad occasion, to all be here for Yom Zikaron. And we all know that people in Israel give so much to live in this country. For instance, my kids, my daughter, we moved to Israel 7 years ago, and my daughter said to me, Ima, I can't wait to serve in the army, and then I will know what it feels like to be a real Israeli. Because you don't feel really Israeli until you understand both the joy, the pain, the suffering, and the ecstasy of having our own country. So here I am, Jody Samuels, someone who was a true wandering Jew. I'd lived in South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia, New York, and then I'm here in Israel, the true wandering Jew, living the prophecies coming on the wings of eagles. And here I am living in Israel. And I'm hoping that tonight we can share with you a little bit about the story of Israel. The story of JIC, my organization, Jewish International Connection. We started as an organization in 2000 for foreign Jews who moved to New York City. We're now in 4 cities, New York, Miami, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. We run hundreds of events each year. We run Jewish heritage trips. In fact, anybody want to join us in Dubai next week? We leave on Sunday. We have 2 trips to Dubai going for 2 different age groups. We have many trips coming up. We have classes, we have social events, Shabbat dinners, and we'd love to see more of you. So please follow us on JIC New York, JIC Israel, and on Instagram, JIC Connect. We're all about connecting people, continuity, and community. Tonight wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all our partners that have joined us, and we have amazing partners. We have so many that it's really almost impossible to read them all out. But I do thank each one because each partner helped to share and each partner helped us to get word out and to share this on their Facebook and social media posts. Ladies and gentlemen listening, I also encourage all of you. I know when I lived outside of Israel, I didn't know what Yom Zikaron meant. I knew like the title, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel what Yom Zikaron meant. And I hope today we can give you guys a taste of what Yom Zikaron actually means. And if you can share this so that other people can understand the true meaning of sacrifice, giving, building, and creating a country, one for Jewish people. So I want to just thank Strength to Strength and Sari Singer because it wouldn't be there without her. And a huge thank you to all the speakers and to all the organizations and to Stacy, my assistant behind the scenes, who makes everything happen. Now I'm going to introduce Maury. Maury Kelman is not just a rabbi. He's my friend, he's my mentor, and he was my neighbor in Jerusalem. Right now, Maury's on sabbatical in Bradley Beach in New Jersey, so we miss him. He's a host of my organization, but his accomplishments include being a rabbi from the Isaac Elkman Theological Seminary. He's worked as a corporate attorney in Manhattan, and he is right now in Shlichut in Bradley Beach. He also founded Kedma, which we work with very closely, a volunteer program for gap year students studying in SAMS. And he runs a halachic conversion program, of which we've hosted many of his students who are in their process. Maury is going to share with us just a couple of words before we move over to the siren. And we will hear the siren that stops everybody in their tracks in Israel and wakes us up to what really is the start of Memorial Day in Israel. Maury.
Thank you very much, Jody, for that very generous introduction. Just very, very briefly again, JIC is a wonderful organization. You should all support it. We want to thank them for all the work that they do, not only on this, but everything they do throughout the year, strength to strength, and all the other partners. So, but we'll get right into it just because the siren is coming up. So I just want to say a few words really on the idea of Zikaron, of memory in Judaism. And anybody who's somewhat acquainted with memory, with Judaism, knows that memory plays an incredibly important part of who we are. We just finished Pesach. We have at the Seder night, not only do we have a mitzvah every day to remember the Exodus from Egypt, we also tell the whole story. Every day, if you look in your Siddur, a lot of people have never probably seen this, at the end of Shacharit, at the end of the morning prayer service, there are actually 6 different memories, remembrances that come from the Torah, come from the Bible, that remember about Shabbat, about the revelation of Mount Sinai. So again, memory, as Professor Yerushalmi in his seminal book called Zachor points out, it plays a really an incredibly important role in our life, not just as George Santaniah pointed out that if we do not know our history, we're doomed to repeat it. But it gives us a sense of who we are. It anchors us. It gives us a sense that we're living not only in this world, but we have incredibly strong tradition that we come from. And that really, it colors everything that we do. So it plays a very important education role. But the Yom HaZikaron that we're about to commemorate this evening I think, plays a little different role. It's less about education, although clearly that's there, through especially people, as Jody pointed out, who are not in Israel, especially the non-Jewish world, that they should understand the tremendous sacrifices that have gone into creating this incredible land of Israel. But it's there really, I think, to give us a chance to empathize with those who've lost. Incredibly, since 1860, which is the official date that we mark for this day in terms of those who have lost, there have been over 24,000 soldiers, people who participated in various battles for Israel, and over 4,000 victims of terror. The day itself began actually, for the first couple of years, it was actually commemorated on Yom Ha'atzmaut itself. It was only in 1951 that Prime Minister Ben-Gurion turned it to the previous day, and it was enshrined in law a little later. And anybody who's been in Israel, and I feel very bereft now not being in Israel at this moment, these are the most incredible days. Somebody coined it as the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. It's the 10 days of salvation, beginning really with Yom HaShoah, the Remembrance Day for the Holocaust, and then continuing with this day, Yom HaZikaron, and culminating tomorrow night with Yom HaAtzmaut. And it's anybody, like I said, who's been there, it's the whole country transformed. Every country has a Memorial Day, right? Anybody who comes from the States knows the Memorial Day, and at the end of that's going to be celebrated the end of this month, but it's totally different. This is a Memorial Day where the entire country literally comes to a stop. Everybody knows somebody, is connected to somebody who was lost, in whether in a war or whether in an act of terror. And it's a chance, even if we haven't, though, it's a chance for us to stop and to say, we're with you, right? To empathize. For anybody who's lost somebody, of course, every day is Memorial Day. Every day is a Yom HaZikaron. There's not a day that goes by if somebody's lost somebody that you don't remember that person. So it's a chance really for us to give a collective bear hug, and to let people know that we're going to stop from our routine, at least for a few hours, to listen, as we're going to be doing this evening or today, wherever you are, and tomorrow as well, and again, all across Israel, the hundreds and thousands, the millions of people who go to the cemeteries, who go to various memorials, to let people know we are with you, that your sacrifice and the sacrifice of those people was not in vain. And even in Judaism is we don't look for noble death. That's not what we are. We're about life. V'chai behem. The Torah tells us we live by our mitzvot. We're a religion of life. And that's what exactly makes the death of somebody so painful, and the death of somebody who's given their life for the state of Israel so painful. But we know also tzadikim b'mitatam krum chayim, that those who are righteous, even in their death, are considered to be alive. And this is a way of keeping everybody alive right now. All those people who gave of themselves, who were killed walking into a pizza store, wherever the case was, or on the battlefield, they're alive, and we feel them. We feel them with us. In a few moments, again, we're going to be having the siren, and for me, who's been there for many, many years on this day, and I think I can speak pretty much for everybody. It's just it's a moment that's really, it's very hard to describe. It's, in fact, reminds me of the reaction. The traditional reaction of Judaism to death has been Vayidom Aharon. When Aaron, the high priest, hears of the death of his two sons, he remains silent. And that's a classic Jewish approach, just to remain silent. We don't have words. We don't have words. So the entire country comes to an absolute standstill. It's an absolutely, I don't know if the best word is magical, but it's magical. It is a magical moment to know that everybody is standing and thinking of the same thing and is paying homage and to what has allowed us to have this incredible state of Israel and to appreciate the amazing miracle that Israel is. We sometimes don't appreciate, whether we're living there, whether we're abroad. We've come to become used to it. And we have to stop and think and remember, it wasn't done by chance. It was done through the incredible sacrifice of all of those who continue also to fight for us. So, Jody, if you're there, I know for you also the moment of silence really is a transcendent moment, and I don't know if you wanted to add anything to what I just said about these moments, but again, it's just it's really hard to describe. And I think wherever you are, even if you're outside the state of Israel, when you're going to hear in a few minutes, just try to tap into that collective spirit that we do have in Israel right now, the sense of complete unity that we have in remembering those and keeping those memories alive. And again, empathizing with those who have lost and listening to the stories as we're going to be listening to tonight.
So, one of the things that I always think about today, and I think about it on Yom HaShoah because it's connected, but we have this big frame in our apartment, and it's of my husband's family, and it was from his grandfather, and there are 11 siblings, and he was the only one who made it to South Africa with the grand plan that he was going to bring out the family, except the family never got out. And I can only imagine that both Gavin's grandfather and his siblings could never have imagined one day there would be a state of Israel, and they definitely wouldn't have imagined that one day their grandchild or great nephew or great niece would be serving in the first sovereign state of the Jewish people in 2000 years. And for me, that is truly incredible. And I know it comes at a price. And sometimes I speak to friends from overseas and they'll be like, aren't you scared your children are going to the army? I have one child, for the viewers, I have one child who's 20 in the army now and one going in. And people say to me, aren't you scared that your child's going to the army? And I think like somebody's child has to go to the army. Sadly, somebody's children sometimes pay a price, and sometimes even citizens living in this country. But I just have to think of them, and they never imagined the Jewish people would have a state or would even be able to live in any form of safety in our own state. So it's a moment where not only do we thank the soldiers when we hear that siren, and do we thank all the people of Israel and civilians and citizens who've given their lives for Israel, but we also remember them. So, and in a couple of minutes, we're going to cut over to the Michael Levine Lone Soldier Center. And one of the things that's really profound is when you think about soldiers who leave the comfort. These are kids from Chutz La'aretz who could be in Harvard and Princeton, and they could be sitting with mommy making them dinner, and they come to serve the state of Israel. And we're going to be joining their live stream, hopefully, if it connects through, and we'll be joining that, and we will be hearing the siren. And immediately after the siren, there'll be a little bit of a program. And after that, after their program, we will continue listening to our speakers, who each one has a story, a journey, and a lesson and a message for each of us. So if you can just hang tight while we hopefully are connecting over.
I need this close right now. I need to know if this is on, not the side.
Hi, Stacey, it's Jola. My mother said the Zoom is missing a digit. Please have a check and see what digit it's missing because they said they can't log in. So please just double check that for me so I can sort it out right now because I just can't.
We should be continuing with the
I would
ceremony.
like to call up members of the Levin family to light the memorial torch. The recitation of Yizkor will be said by Rabbi Binny Friedman.
יזכור, יזכור אלוהים את נשמות בניו גיבוריו, חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, שנפלו במלחמות ישראל בפעולות הגנה, תגמול וביטחון, ובעת מילוי תפקידם, ונשמות כל לוחמי המחתרת וחטיבות הלוחמים במערכות העם, שחרפו נפשם למות על קדושת השם, ובעזרת אלוהי מערכות ישראל הביאו לתקומת האומה והמדינה ולגאולת הארץ ועיר האלוהים. מנשרים כלו ומאריות גברו, החלצם לעזרת העם, והיוו דמם הטהור את רגבי אדמת קודשנו. זכר עקדתם ומעשי גבורתם לא יסופו מאיתנו לעולמים. תהיינה נשמותיהם צרורות בצרור החיים עם נשמות אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ועם שאר גיבורי ישראל וקדושיו שבגן עדן עד עולם. אמן.
Please be seated. I would like to call upon Richard Corman, who serves as the chairman of the board of the Michael Levin Base.
Erev Tov, a stirring siren, a flickering flame, a prayer in our hearts. These are only some of the profound experiences that we will have on Yom Hazikaron. But for many mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, brothers and sisters and beloved friends, this is a very, very painful time. But as we know, Jewish tradition teaches us that in one's time of bereavement, you should not be alone. And therefore, throughout Israel, there are groups just like there are tonight at Ammunition Hill, offering consolation, offering support, making sure that we, as the Jewish people, commemorate those soldiers who were killed defending the state of Israel, and those citizens who were murdered as victims of terror. 24,000 people from the founding of this state. The magnitude of that number gets lost because these were all people that were known to families and are remembered this evening. We are one collective family throughout Israel. And maybe that's why the Michael Levin base has been so stellar in its 2 years of existence. Because the base represents one collective family. Saying to lone soldiers and lone Benot Sheirut, you have a place. You are welcome. And even though you don't have family in Israel, we can be your family away from home. Can you imagine in 2 years, we are now serving 1,400 young men and women who serve the state of Israel? Incredible. You're probably wondering, why did we choose to have this tekes, this ceremony at Ammunition Hill? I'd like to suggest 2 reasons that resonate for me, and hopefully they will resonate for you. For those of you that know Israeli history, you know that in 1967, the Six-Day War, Ammunition Hill was a pivotal battle for Yerushalayim. The fierce fighting that occurred here was instrumental in transforming East and West Jerusalem into a reunified city. And Yerushalayim became Jerusalem, not East or West, just Jerusalem. And I'd like to suggest 2 reasons why Ammunition Hill has meaning for us this evening. And maybe you'll have the same takeaway as I do. The soldiers that you saw this evening are an example of the pride of Israel. The young men and women who are 18, 19, 20 years old and defend our country. We have a citizens' army, and we should show our appreciation and show our gratefulness for their defense of the state of Israel. The second notion I would like to suggest is a metaphor. In the same way that Ammunition Hill was the catalyst that transformed Jerusalem into a unified city, Yom Hazikaron can be that same catalyst to transform Israeli society. There is no more unified time on the Jewish calendar than Yom HaZikaron. Not only are we sitting together here at Ammunition Hill, but throughout the country, there are thousands of groups just like this sitting collectively together. One family, one house of Israel. And so the dual messages of Yom HaZikaron, I believe, are the message that we should take away with us this evening. We should thank a soldier. We should tell them how much we appreciate what they do. Don't take them for granted. And let's start by making our society one that we can call truly the house of Israel, one family. Thank you very much.
And with that powerful introduction, our program begins, where we just get a taste of the suffering, of the pain, the sacrifice, but most importantly, the giving. The fact that these people have given sometimes their lives, sometimes body parts, sometimes a piece of their hearts to the state of Israel. Tonight, I'm going to introduce my dear partner. We've been doing this for many years now, and we couldn't make this happen if it wasn't for Sari Singer from Strength to Strength. She herself has a really, really crazy story of survival, which she will be sharing later in the program. Strength to Strength is a not-for-profit organization in New York City, and it brings together survivors who were all victims of terrorism and their families. And they try and help them heal, as if you can ever heal from such a situation in life. They give psychological and emotional support. They hold retreats, they hold events, they share stories, they share information and advice, and they help raise public awareness. And today, that is part of what we're doing, because we want each one of you to join in this collective hug from the citizens and the Jewish people, citizens of Israel and Jewish people around the world. Sari, are you ready just to introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Jody, so much. It is always an honor and a privilege for us to partner with JICNY. You guys are just really incredible partners, and we want to thank you, Jody, and Stacy, and all the partners that are joining us today, because all these stories that we're hearing are just a glimpse of the thousands of people in Israel that have been impacted by terrorism, and the thousands and thousands of soldiers that have sacrificed their lives for our country. I am honored to share our first speaker with you. Shana Elliott, I've known for a really long time. Shana and I spent a summer in Israel together. She is one of the most amazing people that I know. And on January 22nd, 2002, while waiting at a bus stop on Yafo Street in Jerusalem, where she was headed back to school to study, a terrorist camouflaged in stolen Israeli army gear opened fire, shooting up the street and wounding 42 innocent people, murdering 2. Shana was shot in her left chest and arrived dead on arrival at Shaare Zedek Hospital. And thank God to not only Magen David Adom, their ambulance team, but the doctors and the staff. She was saved. Her left lung was removed along with several ribs and a muscle in her back. Shana's recovery was long and very, very difficult, and I know that personally. And she definitely deals with the reality of post-traumatic stress disorder, like many of us who've been impacted by terrorism, but especially her for being shot just because she was a Jewish person. Her life's purpose is to bring love and celebration, to share her story with hope and peace in her heart. And the only way for hate to be extinguished and for the light in her and her nation to ultimately prevail. And that is exactly the person that Shana Elliott is. And it is my honor to not only know Shana personally, but for you all to be able to hear her story today. So with that, I'm going to give this over to Shana. Shana, you there?
I'm here. Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for having me and that introduction, Sari. What a beautiful event this is, and I'm so proud to be a part of this unique family of survivors that I'm in. So my attack was on January 22nd, 2002, which means that I just had my 20th anniversary of my attack. I was standing on a bus stop waiting for the bus. I was in town in the center of Jerusalem to pick up a plane ticket to go visit my my friend, and a man was dressed in Israeli army fatigues to camouflage his that he was carrying an M16 on his arm, which Israeli soldiers do all over the country, so that nobody would question him. And he was standing about 7 feet to my right. He started spraying bullets from left to right, and I was one of the first people to be shot. And then he sprayed back the other direction and a few times, shooting up the street, shooting up the bus that had stopped in front of our stop. And the bus was driven straight to the hospital, and I flew back by the impact of the bullet, and some civilians found me and dragged me into the storefront that was also shot up, so the glass was all over the floor. I was dragged into this storefront. It was just kind of minutes, and there was an ambulance that was across the street, just so happened, saw me and ran to my aid. I was extremely lucky that they were efficient and timely about going to my body and taking me on a gurney straight to the hospital. Although when there's a terrorist attack or a pigua, all of the cell phones are turned off. So there's usually issues with communication during that time. Since their goal is to, stop any communication for the terror that might be happening. Sometimes there's one terrorist attack, then there's fleeing, and then there's another terrorist attack that happens where everybody was fleeing too. So they're always aware of this, and they take caution. So there was an issue with the ambulance CP, but the drivers was able to use their cell phone and called ahead to speak to the doctors at Charet Tzedek and get a team of surgeons ready for my arrival. And so I could pass instead of going to the ER straight up to surgery. So that was what I did. When my body arrived at the hospital in Israel, you're not allowed to, as a Jewish person, you're not allowed to look at a dead body. So they take a photo of you when you enter the hospital. If there's a probability that you won't be living, they take a photo of you to identify your body. So they had taken a photo of me, but they still send me up to surgery. I don't know why, still to this day, but I guess when you're in the right place at the right time and the stars align, then they do. So I went up to surgery. I was in surgery for about 4 hours. And at the same time, since I was an American student, my parents were being notified by the school that I was at that something had happened to me. The schools in Israel create a chain. that a system that one student will call another student and so on to make sure that everybody is well and accounted for. And my roommate, who was in the terrorist attack with me, her last name starts with a Z. So they couldn't get a hold of her. They didn't know where she was, and they figured out that we were together and had been in the terrorist attack. So this was how my parents got alerted and went into motion to fly to be at my bedside in Jerusalem. So I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. I had amnesia for a week, but I did wake up, and my parents were there, and my sister and brother-in-law and my best friend all flew to Israel to be with me. And it was a jarring experience at first because I had no idea what had happened to me. And every time they tried to tell me what had happened to me, I would soon forget and then need to be told all over again. So my trauma was creating more trauma, not just for myself, but also for my family, considering that they had to continually tell me the news over and over again. And then I would have the reactions to it of, disbelief and shock and upset. And then, 30 minutes would go by and I would be able to recall that information, and I would have new questions, which were really old questions about why my chest was hurting and why I was in this place and where was I, and there's Hebrew on the sheets and what's going on. So eventually my parents started to just tell me that I was in an accident until I was able to hold together some memory to where, I could understand. It took about a week and a half for that. And then my road to recovery was about 2.5 years, I'd say, physically. I had to learn again how to walk. I needed to learn again how to write. I needed to learn again how to do menial tasks. And my left side was affected. So I had my left lung removed and my left shoulder back muscle. And it had severe nerve damage. So the pain would radiate all through my shoulder, down my arm, and into my fingers, which left me kind of in a paralyzed state on my left side. And I'm a lefty. So I had to learn how to write again on my right side. I did become ambidextrous. And all of these things were going on physically. And then the emotional, mental component was also there. I was a 19-year-old girl, and I was, having concerns. They told me that I may or may not be able to have children, and all these realities, floating around in my mind and creating this new world for myself. It took a lot of coaching, and it took a lot of mental strength to work through it, be resilient enough to manage things and get to the other side of trauma and learning again how to live in the body that I now have. Knowing victims of terror and survivors of terror, you learn that you're not alone. In strength to strength, you learn that there are other people who struggle with the very same things that you struggle with. The situation in your life where you have a before and after graduation, or a before and after marriage, or a before and after children. My before and after was, being shot by a terrorist who wanted to kill me because I was a Jew. And this was something that I grappled with quite a lot for a long period of time. Knowing this, with this knowing, and then working through it and finding peace within myself, finding my new reality and what that new case of me would look like and would feel like, was something that took me a long time, longer than it took for my physical body to heal. Strength to Strength was a huge opening for me, and it allowed me to have comrades in such a unique and special experience. And it turned my pain, and it turned the feelings that I had into something more productive, even though my PTSD was very strong, and then waned over time. Once I had children, it came back very, very intensely, to the point where I would have nightmares often. And if I was driving in a car and at a stop sign, I would have weird feelings that, what if somebody, comes and tries to, kill me in the car while I'm at the stop sign. And my brain kind of would go through this process of fear and these emotions of fear. And I had to talk myself out of it. I had to program and reprogram myself to talk myself out of these scenarios that my brain was coming up with, to kind of find that inner peace again. So over time, that has been my struggle, but also my greatest strength. I have learned so much about what it means to be a survivor. There's lots of survivors in the world, and there's lots of people who have been through major trauma, and to be able to connect with others and to be able to have that understanding was and is such a beautiful part of my life now. I really appreciate and am grateful for that community, because it is a community and it brings us all kind of together in a very unique way. Maybe nothing that we would ever hope for one another. However, it's the reality. You cannot choose that, you were in this situation. So now you make the best of it in the best way you know how. So I have found that it's been a journey, and it's been almost like a new beginning, several new beginnings for me, to find in this moment, to take away from this experience and my life journey, that sometimes, you encounter people who have goals to hate, and the best you can do is to combat those goals with your own goals of shedding light into the world. And I firmly believe that we are all searching for purpose. And now, because of my before and after, because of this moment in time that was created for me in my life, I can create a before and after that is beautiful. And not only do I find that to be a victory, because when a terrorist is seeking out, they're not just seeking out to terrorize that one time, but then it creates this ripple effect of terror. And I want to be mindful of my message, because when you are in this situation, you have two roads you can take. One being, setting the scene and speaking the story out loud, and then creating more fear and worry and to be consumed by the hate. Or you can allow for yourself to raise the consciousness and realize that now my gift of light and my gift of hope, that now I have 3 children. I'm so blessed, and that they will then continue life, and that they will continue hope. That is the best anecdote to being in a terrorist attack, is to create good things with your time and with your life, and to create wonderful connections, which I have with Strength to Strength, and to create a beautiful story out of my life and my resilience, and to hear others' stories of their life and their resilience, and to keep the momentum moving in this positive way, so that we all learn and grow and move forward in our lives with this new agenda. And just, not allowing for the other side to get their way, but realizing that you're able to create a new type of reality for yourself, where there's peace and where your journey involves peace and peacemaking and to share love. So that's one thing that I take very seriously, and one thing that I focus on and continually learn to do. I think it has helped my PTSD tremendously, that I no longer allow it to control my mind, that I now am in control, and that I have this perception that my experience will be for good and for better or for worse. When I was 19, I was shot in the chest, and that was horrible, and something that took me years and years to work through physically and emotionally. Now I'm able to shine. I'm able to be myself, and I'm able to walk around this world and be the Jewish woman that I am, and cultivate my own reality, my own journey, and share that journey, and be a part of beautiful moments like this one and others, where I can continually spread joy and love, and allow for joy and allow for love. That to me is the best antidote to terrorism, is to have that realization and allow for that journey to be what drives me. So it's something that is not easy, and it's kind of a daily work that you do. My attack was the 22nd of January. So around January and even in December, I usually have nightmares, and I usually have flashbacks, and I will have, that type of reoccurring scenarios that go on in my brain, because PTSD is not a choice, just like being shot wasn't. But what I do with it is my choice, and where I take it from there is my choice. So learning through the pain is something that is very unique, but also important. So that's my story. And I don't know if there would be any questions or anything, but
Well,
that's-
Shayna, first of all, every time I hear your story, it's just so moving, because I think you and I share a lot of similar attitudes towards what we've been through. We had no control of what happened to us on those days, but we have control of what we live our lives going forward. And that's the most important thing, that we make sure the terrorists don't succeed in what they set out to do. And everything that you do in your life today of spreading love and light, and you are a light to all of us. On our retreats, you are one of the most positive people there. And I think it's interesting because you brought it up, but the idea that we might have had different experiences, but we have this common bond of something that's brought us all together, and we built this community ourselves. And I feel like we're part of something bigger than we even imagined, in what we're doing and in how we're changing the world just by moving forward from what we've been through.
100%.
And I'm just wondering if you want to share a little bit of I know that your parents were there, and I know that you didn't mention it, but you had to stay in Israel for a number of weeks because you couldn't fly back right away. So how is that time for you in Israel with your family being there? How is it for them in this situation? How have they been able to deal with what you've been through over the years? Because we always say this, and in Israel, I remember hearing this, that a terrorist attack doesn't impact just one person. There's a minimum of 8 people that are impacted by what happens to an individual civilian in a terrorist attack. So how did your parents deal with that?
I think it would be fair to say not well. I think that was something that, when I decided to go to Israel to study, it was my decision, and it was something that I really fought for. So my parents let me go on my own journey, which I am grateful that they did teach me that in my life, to go on your own journey. But it was extremely difficult for my parents, and it was extremely difficult for my sister. They, I think, still grapple with certain things that probably come up for them. The flight to Israel, when they flew to Heathrow at first and then to Tel Aviv to come to my bedside, they didn't know if I was going to live or die. So I think that as a mom now, I have so much empathy for the situation that they were put in. And I have so much to know how courageous they were, and to understand to some degree, although I'll never be able to really understand what it was like for them, but to know how hard that must have been, to not know if your child is alive or dead on the other side. That is something that is almost like haunting. So the reality of that, it really takes a toll. It takes a toll on a family. Like you said, it's definitely not just one person that's affected. It's their entire family, their entire community. And in a lot of ways, the community came together. In my situation, there was so much prayer and davening spoken on my behalf. And we speak about unity, and it's so important to speak about unity. I think that was a moment of unity for my community, that they were able to come together in such a sad moment to it's something the Jewish community specifically, I find, to be so good at, is to come together in those hard times and those hard moments, and to be there for each other, and to support one another, and to listen. So I'm glad that my parents had some support, and that they know that they were heard. But I do think that it has, really affected my family a lot, and has been a harshness. I was 19 and kind of flying by the seat of my pants in life, in many respects.
Yes, I remember.
And as I should have, I was living my life, and I was doing, my fun things, and also learning, but living and being a youth in a beautiful moment in my life. And all of that stopped. It came to a dead stop for me. And because it came to a dead stop for me, it also became a dead stop for my family, because then I was no longer a thriving 19-year-old who was living on her own in Israel and going to come back to the States to go to college. Now I was needing heavy babysitting. I was needing therapy 5 times a week. Right. I was needing intense amounts of medication. I was constantly in pain. It was emotional for them, and it was very hard on my parents to have that kind of a shift in your reality. It is. Right. It is right. a major shift in what your expectations are now and what your life feels like now. So that shift was a painful shift. And I do believe that we have done the best with it that we can, but those traumatic changes in one's life are never anticipated. You have to kind of figure it out as you go. So I do think that it was incredibly difficult for my family at that time.
And I appreciate you sharing that little insight. An attack happens in an instant, but the impact lasts a lifetime. And what we do in that lifetime after the attack is more so the hope and the resilience that you talk about versus the actual attack itself. The attack happens to us, but it doesn't just define us. There's so much more to us than just that day. And we are just so honored and blessed that you could be here to share your story, which I know how difficult it is, especially on Yom Hazikaron. And we love that you're here with us. And again, thank you for sharing and being here with us. No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sending lots of love, Sheena.
And
Hi.
sorry, I'm going to jump in here with a little bit of a conversation to you because I think it is so incredible. When we had a survivor last week at JIC, her message was she chose life. She chose to be happy, she chose life, and she chose that as her best revenge for everything she had been through. And I think in a way, Shayna's whole story could be summed up
Absolutely.
like, I'm choosing life. And, you know, lahavdil, a complete separation. I have a child with special needs. But when she was born, my husband always said, we can't ask why. Why us? Why? We were like, how are we going to move forward from this? How are we going to choose? And I was in Israel in 2014, and it was in Tzuk time. So that was the first time Israel, after like since the Gulf War in 1991, had missiles rained on them. And I have to tell you that it was pretty incredible to see how Israelis choose life. I just remember the first night there was a missiles in Jerusalem. People didn't really believe it was going to happen in Jerusalem. And at exactly 10 p.m., a siren went off. Except at 11 p.m., it was the World Cup soccer. Israelis are absolutely soccer crazy, and every bar and every restaurant has a screen up and all over the streets. And like, you know, just anybody all over Sydney, New York, Toronto, Miami, just imagine a missile landed in your city or close to your city and you had to go into your bomb shelters. How many people would be out in the streets? And I remember sending a message to friends and saying, so I guess we're not meeting. And they were like, Mapitom, you know, of course we are. Like, why not? Because that's Israel. And I remember the next night being outside again, and there was like a siren and everyone runs in and then comes out and carries on watching the soccer, because in Israel, people choose life. And I think the most powerful message that the Shaynas of the world, and we thank you, Shayna, for that message, is saying, we chose life, you chose to be happy, you chose to have your children, and you chose to see that your children continue your legacy. And we know that every single day, last year for Yom Yerushalayim, which is coming up soon, we had a huge event in the Old City. And we were all davening and looking over the Kotel. And the next thing we heard bang, bang, bang. So of course, for the Olim, you know, we all thought, oh, fireworks. All the Israeli soldiers were like, that's not fireworks, guys, that's gunshots. And the next thing we saw hundreds of soldiers running up to the Temple Mount. And the next day we heard how many were injured. And this is real. Every single day, soldiers are defending us. People are giving their lives. But if there's one message we can give back, we choose life, because that's the only message, you know.
And that's the epitome of Shayna. Anybody who knows her, we are blessed to have her here, and she is a walking miracle. So
thank you, Shane. Look at that smile. She has such a huge smile. So I think just seeing that smile is worth everything. And I'm sure for your parents, that smile is worth so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Shayna. And now we're going to go to our next speaker. And every speaker has a story, and every speaker is going to break your heart. And every speaker, I should say, try put yourself in their shoes and imagine their world and their reality. And I think there was one thing either Sari or Shayna said, they didn't choose this reality. They didn't choose to be in this situation, but they were. And I'm going to introduce our next speaker. His name's Tully Wells. I actually know Tully because we go to the same minyan. We hang out in the same circles. I see him at the same social events. And he's a man that smiles. And I don't know if I could smile. Tully he's a 7th generation Yerushalmi, meaning his family were here for 7 years. He's Israeli. He served as an IDF officer for 4 years. He was then an air marshal on LL planes. I don't know if you guys remember, after 9/11, they had these marshals on planes. I think LL might have always had them, but they're like undercover, but they're armed and they're there to prevent terrorist attacks. He lived in Florida with his family, where he's running a successful insurance and financial advisory business. And he did what all good Jews do. They either go to, you know, the one promised land is Florida, but the other promised land is to come to Israel on Passover, on Pesach. And he came with his family and he was sitting at a sidewalk cafe in 2006, April 2006, and he was eating shawarma. You know how many people come to Israel and eat shawarma as part of their vacation? He was in an old part of Tel Aviv. He was sitting there with his son Daniel, and a suicide bomber detonated his backpack with 40 pounds of explosives and shrapnel. He killed 11 and he wounded 64 people. Tali, he himself was wounded, and he's going to share his incredibly tragic story. Tali.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Sari and Stacy. I'm not only seventh generation Israeli. My parents actually fought for the independence of the country. And my mother was sitting in the British jail for 2.5 years, and my father was a prisoner of war in Jordan, defending the old city of Jerusalem. So, yeah, we belong here. And, you know, unfortunately, I had to go to the States, or I chose to go to the States. I stayed there for 38 years. But we visited Israel very often. On Passover, or right before Passover of 2006, my father already was 96 years old. And I thought that it probably will be last time we can celebrate Pesach with him and my mother. So we decided to go to Israel. We had a great Seder with the entire family. It was amazing. During Chol HaMoed, we decided to take a little trip to Tel Aviv. We stayed in a hotel, and I don't know Tel Aviv so well. There was no Waze at that time. So we decided the next morning, after we arrived to Tel Aviv, to take a taxi to where we wanted to go in Tel Aviv to do some shopping. The taxi driver was confused himself. He lost his way, and for some reason he stopped just by this shawarma place. By the way, it was shawarma on matzah. And it was kosher for Passover. So he let us off at that point, and he said, I don't know how to get to where you want, just leave. So it wasn't that far from where we wanted. And we checked the shawarma, it looked good, and we decided to come back for lunch. We were doing shopping, and then at noontime, Daniel, blessed memory, became hungry. So we decided to go back to that shawarma place and meet Cheryl, my wife, later on at the shawarma place. We went there. We bought our shawarma. This shawarma place had, they didn't have seats inside, but they had seats on the sidewalk, like little tables and chairs. We got our shawarma and we went to our table. And Daniel got up, brought 2 hands full of ketchup. I think he ate everything with ketchup besides ice cream. And he sat down across me, across this little table. We were just the entrance to that eatery, to that sidewalk. And here comes a teenager wearing black pants and black t-shirt and something was kind of strange, but still didn't ring any bell. The backpack was pretty heavy. Right behind Daniel, the security guard of the restaurant was looking at him, and he said, "What do you want?" And that terrorist didn't want to speak because that will give him away. And he did like that. "I need to eat." So the security guard asked him, "Can you open your backpack?" And at that point, this evil terrorist had an evil smile on his face when he approached his backpack. When I saw that, I knew exactly what's going to happen. I tried to get up from my chair and jump on Daniel to protect him, but it was too late. The bomb was detonated. I was thrown back. Daniel was thrown on me, and he shouted, "Dad, Dad, pick me up." I don't know how I heard it because my ears were all gone, but I did hear it. And I tried to pick him up, but I was myself injured and I couldn't move. So I started yelling, "A boy injured, a boy injured," not knowing that really there were already 9 people who died on the spot and 64 others were injured. Eventually, the Magen David came and took Daniel right away. At that point, I just let myself go unconscious. I knew he was right now safe and picked up. I'm not sure exactly how long later they picked me up. Knowing that I was his dad, they brought us to the same hospital, Ichilov, in Tel Aviv. Now, I just want to make a comment here. That terrorist came through an unfinished security fence. Now, why was it unfinished? So I was told the truth. Like a week and a half so earlier, Condoleezza Rice, she was the Secretary of State of the United States, came and put a lot of pressure on the government not to complete the security fences. They're inhumane. I wonder what she would say on that terrorist. Was he very humane? So we were brought to the hospital, and Daniel and the doctors were fighting tremendously for his life. Almost every day, Daniel was in a surgery, lost another part of his body. And I can't even imagine being in the shoes of Cheryl and our daughter, who was at that time at Tufts University. She came in right away with Cheryl's parents. They were jumping from one bed to another between Daniel and me. For me, it probably was easier at that time because I had no idea what's going on. and how badly Daniel was injured. For some reason, Daniel's stay in the hospital attracted a lot of people, like a lot of dignitaries and reporters, TV reporters, and just a lot of strangers that came to the hospital with well wishes. One day, one of the days, I was rolled to the ICU where Daniel was, where his the chief surgery, the trauma surgery in that hospital, name was Dror Sofer. He agreed to have a news conference right outside the door of the ICU. We stood there and he told the reporters Daniel's situation. Didn't give much hope, was very direct. And then there were two reporters, I think from CNN and BBC, were like, as if they agreed, they were in cahoots, and they threw me a question that really shocked me. They asked me, Mr. Waltz, what kind of revenge you want to take at the family of that terrorist? I was stunned and I said, all what I want today, that everybody will pray for the recovery of Daniel. But they kept pushing. It was very strange. But at that point, Dr. Sofer ended the conference. He said, that's enough. At noon, on May 14, 2006, we were told that Daniel is not going to make it. All the family, cousins, brothers, of course, Cheryl and our daughter, were standing around Daniel's bed, singing his favorite songs, holding his hand until he took his last breath. He said, Shema Israel, and he was taken away. As soon as the news came out that Daniel passed away, the mother of the terrorist was shown on Al Jazeera TV, happy as could be, praising her son for his heroic success. Daniel was Jewish and American, so it was a double win for them. She said that she wishes for her other children to follow her son's footsteps. But what she didn't say, but we all knew, is one, many Muslims, not all, but many Muslims do not value life as we do. They value death. And they're very open about it. They're not shy about it at all. But the reason she was very happy, and she didn't say, is that now she's eligible to receive huge monthly income for her son's barbaric act. And you know who signs those checks is the president or the head of the Palestinian states, Mahmoud Abbas. The more they kill, the bigger the check is. Now, where did they get the money from? We know Germany is the largest contributor to the Palestinian aid. Many other European countries and Scandinavian countries are also donating a lot of money under the disguise of humanitarian aid, but they know that the money goes to pay the terrorist families. They know it goes to pay for riots. And most of the money goes to the pockets of the people in control there in the Palestinian area. Now, the second largest contributor, at least it was, are the American government. Our taxpayer money, American taxpayer money, goes to the Palestinian to pay for things that we really don't want them to get paid. But there are also some positive things that happened during that horrific time. Things that we all now know and understand, but we didn't know before about Israel. When Daniel arrived to the hospital, he was brought immediately to the OR, to the operating room. There were 3 teams of surgeons that worked on him. They worked on him for 13 hours. The problem was he was the closest to the terrorist, and miraculously, he didn't die right away. But he had horrific injuries, and he was bleeding without them being able to stop the bleeding. My brother-in-law heard about a doctor that invented a kit that was specifically for trauma injuries that will help clog and stop the bleeding. He somehow found his number, called him, and that doctor said, "I'm on my way." My sister was waiting for him outside at the gate of the hospital. He arrived in minutes with his little bag of that kit. He started undressing on the way to the hospital. He threw my sister his keys, and he was just running to get scrubbed in and start working. He entered the surgery room, the OR, and he was successful that night to stop the bleeding. Now, from what I understand, it only can happen in Israel. At least in the United States, I don't believe there is one hospital that will let a doctor that is not admitted there to go and treat a patient, and not only treat a patient, go into the OR and actually do the procedure. Only in Israel. We have to be very, very proud. Now, after the surgery, after my surgery, actually, I was waking up, and Cheryl, my wife, was beside me. And I remember I started seeing something blurry, and I saw her. And then I saw somebody was standing by my door, by the door of the room where I was recuperating. And he saw me opening my eyes, and he said, "Mr. Waltz." And I couldn't talk. I had all these things in my mouth, in my throat. And Cheryl said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Dr." I don't remember his name, and I'm a trauma surgeon from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. I came to tell you something. And she said, what do you want? And he said, I just came back from your son's bed. I looked at his chart, and I have to tell you, this hospital doesn't have doctors. They're not doctors. They're angels. I didn't understand what he was saying, because I didn't know what really happened to Daniel. I knew he was injured, but I didn't know he was that bad. So he said, let me tell you something. Looking at the chart, and from being a trauma surgeon from New York, I know the rules. When a patient comes in and he's bleeding, we will maybe give him 5, and in very, very special incidents, we'll give him 8 units of blood. But that's maybe the top. At an extreme cases, we'll even give 10 units of blood. And he said, your son received over 200 units of blood that night, his first surgery. Today, I understand that it was a good thing, but at that time, I had no idea that Daniel he was injured so badly and he needed so much blood. The doctor who admitted Daniel to the surgery told Cheryl after that when Daniel was conscious when he was brought in, and he kept telling the doctor, I want to leave. I want to leave. And she said, I wouldn't let him die that day. I had to get as much blood as I can from other hospitals, anywhere I could. They already gave him blood that wasn't even his type, but they had to do that. Now, you have to understand, Daniel was so badly injured. And as I said, he was losing parts of his body every day. And the doctors knew he's not going to make it. We kind of knew. We didn't want to believe that. But again, the doctors did not save a penny on any treatment, and Daniel needed treatments that were thousands of dollars each time, and he got some treatments a few times a day. They didn't care. They wanted to do everything they could to save him. Doctors in Israel are angels. So when Daniel passed away, government representative came to us and gave us very short time to decide whether we want to bury him in Israel or in the States. Since we lived in Florida, we decided to bring Daniel to Florida. We had an amazing farewell ceremony in Jerusalem. We went by my parents. At that time, my father couldn't even see anymore. He was 96. Where he told me what we learned from Shana. He told me, Tuli, uvacharta b'chaim, and you choose life. You know what I suffered in my life, and I choose life. You choose life. We went to the airport, got on the plane, and in the plane, the captain came to us and he extended his condolences to us, went back to his cockpit, and we heard him on a speaker telling the passengers that we have his flight has a very special passenger was killed in a pigua, in a terror attack, and his name is Daniel. And right after that, he played Elton John, the song Daniel, until the plane took off. Little about Daniel. Daniel was incredible. And I'm running out of time, so I can talk about a year about Daniel, but one thing I have to tell you about Daniel, one of the most important things that he felt that is like Yamud Vebal Yavo, it's like he has to be so respectful to us, his parents. For him, Kibud Av Va'em was amazingly priority. And there is a little story about a friend of Daniel whose parents never let him sleep over at anybody, not even at uncles, aunts, nobody. Daniel slept over there, but the friend, his name is Jacob, his parents will not let him sleep anywhere. One Friday, Daniel comes back with Jacob, and Jacob has like a bag, sleepover bag. And I said, Jacob, are you going to sleep over here? He said, yes. And he told me what happened. His parent, when Daniel was staying over there, Daniel was talking about us in so much respect that his father told Jacob, if this boy, this teenager can speak about his parents so highly, he is the only place I'm going to let you sleep over, that family. That's the Daniel. It's like amazing. And we had our revenge, which I didn't know at that time, that we're going to have some so-called revenge at that news conference. But we did have few revenges. Daniel, from his last 2 or 3 or 4 years, begged us to have another brother. And the night before the pigua, before the terror attack, we stayed at a beautiful place called Vered HaGalil in the Galilee. And he arranged for us to have a room on our own. And he said, Mom, Dad, go make me a brother. So we did. And that was our miracle. We have a son born about a year after Daniel was killed. And of course, the next revenge was we made Aliyah. Despite terrorists that really wanted us out of this country, we came back to stay. And the last revenge is we brought Daniel's body last few months ago to Israel. And it was amazing. It was 15 years after he was killed. And when he was exhumed, the rabbi was amazed. His body was intact as if he died yesterday. He was waiting to come to Israel. and he is here now with us. Thank you.
Wow, Tali, no words. I'm crying with you. I'm crying with everyone who's on the Zoom. And we're all sending a collective hug to you and Cheryl, because there are no words. You know, I really appreciated a couple of things you said in your talk, because nothing you can say can erase the pain. Yet I'm so amazed at your ability to have hakarat tov to the doctors. And my husband, who's a trained emergency room doctor and intensive care specialist, always says that only in Israel do they value a life to the same way that they will do anything. And instead of like deciding on an algorithm, they decide that every life is worth fighting for. And I think that is so special that you knew that, and you knew you were in a place that they fought for your son's life. So if that's, you know, it's just something very powerful for people to hear.
We're in very good contact with all the doctors. We speak a few times a year. We keep in touch. They're very special.
And while I know that nothing can ever take away the pain, I have a question for you, because I know you guys have fought in the courts, and I know you've tried to bring justice to the situation, and that the goal of what you were trying to do was to make sure other families never, ever have to go through the pain and suffering. And while some of your initiatives have been successful, and there've been some things like pay to slay and, you know, legislation that passed in the US, do you think there's been movement in getting justice for families?
Even though we had good success in courts and Congress and passed few laws and, you know, banking laws, I think I can repeat what the late head of the Mossad was telling us, Meir Dagan, God bless memory. He said, it doesn't matter how big and strong and macho those terrorists, if you take their money, if you stop their money, they're not going to be terrorists. And we had some, you know, we have, I cannot say too much about it, but we had some success in closing some terrorists to get some money from, you know, a few sources, but it's nothing. Today, the Germans, even the Americans and the Europeans are giving them probably close to $1 billion a year. They can do whatever they want. So I hope we did our little things, you know, and heard them somehow, but it has to be a big movement to really convince even the Israeli government not to allow that money to come in.
Well, Tali, in the merit of your son, I hope his neshama has an aliyah, and we're all sending hugs and loves, and stay strong, because we want people like you taking that initiative to make sure that that funding stopped, and we have to do everything we can. So thank you for helping shed some light on that, because I don't think us lay people always understand how much of that funding and the challenges. So maybe we can have a whole nother discussion about that more in detail. And thank you for your time. And with that, Sari is going to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, that was extremely, extremely moving. Thank you, Tuli, for sharing that with us. A lot of the things that you said resonated, especially with Shane and I. We're both looking at each other on the screen and hearing your words that are really hitting our hearts very hard. And we are so grateful for you to be able to share this story for people to remember Daniel and for, for the work that you're doing to try and combat terrorism. And Shannon and I don't discuss it often, but we're also dealing with that kind of stuff as well, because that's the only way we can fight back and to try and stop them from having other families go through what we've been through. I'm going to get to our next speaker. I just want to make sure that Or is here. Hold on. Okay, great. Sorry about that. We are really honored and privileged to have a wounded soldier join us, a hero today, to share his story. Or is actually a part of an organization that I am very close to in Israel called Tikvot. It is run by an incredible woman who literally every single person that she comes in touch with becomes a part of her family. And Tikvot, which means hope, is an organization that brings together wounded soldiers and victims of terrorism through extreme sports. And the power of coming together like that and helping each other and building each other up is the best thing that we could do when going through something like this, whether it's a civilian who's injured or whether it's a brave hero who's been injured, or while serving the IDF was injured and his life as he knew it changed forever. During a special mission, a terrorist threw a bomb at his feet and it exploded. And when he woke up, he was told that he would probably never walk again. But as a lot of these soldiers, and Or is no different, his strength and his resilience and his determination, a year later, he was back on his feet, thank God. And we are so blessed that he is here with us and that he's going to share a little bit of a story. And maybe he'll share a little bit about the amazing work of Tikvot and how they've impacted his life because they've impacted mine as well. So with that, Or, are you here?
Yes. Hello, everyone. First of all, Sari, thank you for having us. And I want to thank you all for come to hear our story. It's very important to us as well. So my name is Or Porat. I'm 29 years old, originally from Jerusalem. I served in Duvdevan unit. Duvdevan unit, it's one of the IDF special forces. We specialize in undercover operations. So if you watched Fauda it's sort of based on my unit. On May 9, 2016, there was a terror attack in Jerusalem. A terrorist wanted to execute the terror attack in Jerusalem. Sadly, he succeeded. He murdered a police officer and a woman, Levana and Yossi. And he got neutralized by the forces. He got killed in the field. One day after the terror attack, we got intel that his brother wanted to execute also a terror attack to revenge his death. So we went to stop him on October 10, 2016. So I went with all my teammates. We were ready with our equipment, and we put the explosive on the door and waited for the breach order. Right before the breach order, the terrorist threw a bomb, a device. It felt like 1 meter, 1.5 meters in front of me. And after 2 seconds, I didn't even have the chance to try to escape the bomb. It exploded. The next thing I remember, it's only like in pictures. From there on, everything is blurred. I felt backwards. Everything was black in the beginning. I didn't saw nothing. I didn't hear nothing, just like beeps in my ears. And then I felt my leg was very cold. And then I started to see a little bit around me, and I saw a lot of blood. And I realized it's my blood. And then there came the pain with all the blood, and it was very weird feeling. So my teammates evacuated me to a restaurant, was nearby, and everything was like an action movie. There was a lot of shootings around me. And the paramedic, when he approached me, he looked at my leg, and I saw his face. And I remember it was not, his face was very like worried. So he gave me a morphine, and then also he gave me caffeine, which is a very strong drug that they give it to people that got injured very badly. And that caused me some illusions, the ketamine together with the morphine. So I started to see, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like another world. And I'm a believer man. And also I remember that something happened to me. And with all these illusions and like worlds I saw and stars, so I thought that I was in the afterlife. And I remember I was very sad because I was not able to say goodbye to my family and friends. And then I woke up in the hospital. That's the next thing I remember. I saw my commander. I saw my family. And then the next thing I remember that the day or the 2 days after I a little bit got recovered, the doctor came into my room, and he said, I asked him, okay, doctor, when I will be able to walk again, to run again? There's a lot of activities. My team is waiting for me. There's a lot of operations that we need to do. And he said, okay, but you need to relax because I don't know if you will ever be able to walk again as you used to. And from there, I had two options. One is to accept his words and, maybe that's my fate and I will not be able to walk again and to be a combatant again. And the next option was fight. And with all the struggle and with all the difficulty in the rehabilitation, just to fight and keep moving on. And that's I chose the second option. And I've been in rehabilitation for 1 year almost. The first months I was just in bed. I couldn't even go outside the bed. My friends and family supported me, helped me with everything. In the next few months after that, I was on wheelchair, 2 crutches, 1 crutch, and then I was able to walk by myself. And the next thing in my rehabilitation, it was the first thing for me that was very meaningful. It was the first extreme thing I did after my injury, and it was to go out with the Tikvot organization to a ski in Italy. I did snowboard for my first time after the injury. I couldn't believe at the beginning I can do that, but my friends and also Simon, which is here, supported me a lot. And I did it. It's also my first time I did snowboard. I used a lot of painkillers, but I did it, and it was such meaningful for me because it was just not me in the ski. It was with a lot of veterans that got wounded in battle or not in battle, and we fight together and we support together. And because Tikvot, I'm able to do these things today. You're not seeing because the background, but I have 2 surfboards behind me. I started to surf. I tried to hike again. And I'm trying to do some activities today just because the hope I got from Tikvot. So Simon, you're here, and I wanted to thank you a lot. And I learned through my rehabilitation, through the process, that there is such an amazing people around us, also in Israel and also outside Israel, because we're getting support from all the Jewish community all over the world, as Israeli veterans that got injured in battle. And this support, such as you that come today to hear us, it gives us a lot of power to continue our rehabilitation, and also to support other veterans that injured lately. Sadly, there's all the time operations, these wars, sadly, because we need to protect ourselves, where we live, or our enemies around us. there's also there's always someone that want to hurt us. So we have to protect ourselves. So sadly, there's all the time more veterans that get injured in battle. So today I'm able to help other veterans that got injured. So I want to thank you again, Simon. Today, after my rehabilitation, I also accomplished my first degree in laws. Today I'm in internship with high-tech companies in laws. And I know that's because I choose to fight. I choose to fight. And that's because of all the power I got from all the Jewish community around the world. So I want to thank you all for your support. I want to thank you for to hear our stories. This is very meaningful for us. Thank you for your time.
Or thank you, first of all, so much for sharing that. And I know also from being at events in Tikvot in Israel and the Friday morning surfing lessons, where it's incredible to see. I mean, it's unbelievable sometimes because you've got soldiers there that are missing limbs and that are like you who they didn't think they'd be able to walk again, and you've got victims of terrorism and family members of victims that are there that lost loved ones, and everyone's just together. And you would think that with a group like this that we're all kind of like moping around, but it's just the opposite. We're sharing good things with each other, we're laughing, we're enjoying, and we're fighting back and showing the terrorists that they didn't succeed in what they set out to do by living our lives. I want to know if you could maybe talk for a second about what the day is like for you on Yom Hazikaron. Is there anything special that you do tomorrow? In terms of like with your fellow soldiers, is there something that happens? Because for anyone who's watching who may not be in Israel at the time, I know from other soldiers that Yom HaZikaron is really sometimes a get together for some of the units, and especially those units that have lost, other soldiers. They come and visit the families. What do you do on Yom HaZikaron? What makes it special for you?
So me and my teammates on Yom HaZikaron, we going to the graveyard, and we go to visit our friends that got killed and murdered in battle from Duvdevan unit. The last time I went was from to the grave of Ronen Lubarski. Ronen Lubarski got injured got killed in 2018 in Kalandia during an operational activity, while a terrorist threw like a rock that fell sadly straight on his head. In our operations, the one operation, because all operation it's in the West Bank, and in the terrorist areas, it's like a very tight villages. So it's you don't know where the danger will come from. It's from the roof. It's from this house or this house. So sadly, Ronen killed from a very big brick on his head from a terrorist hands. So we divided between ourselves who going to each a soldier that got killed, which grave we visit, and it's very hard day for us. It's very emotional, also because most of us suffering from PTSD, and when it's getting very emotional, so everything gets very intense, very hard. But we're doing this together. We're trying to be together every Yom HaZikaron, and we support each other. So yeah.
And also I know, and maybe you could share a little bit, what the PTSD, and we all have this, and especially the soldiers that have been injured, can you talk about a little bit about some of the other activities that you do in Tikvot that really help you a lot besides the surfing and the skiing? There's a lot of other things that go on. What are the things that really bring you all together and help you to really have that resilience and that strength that we all know is so ingrained in Israel?
So the first time I did with the ski with Tikvot in Italy, it was the first time I met another injured soldiers like me. Before that, I I didn't have like this group of friends and people I met that got injured like me, suffered PTSD. Everyone with his story, different stories, but we're all in the same boat. So when you come to the surfing lessons and all the other activities, so the really big thing that really help us to move on and give us the support and the power to continue our rehabilitation in our regular life, is to talk with each other about the struggles that we are having from PTSD, or even physically difficulties that I have today. I still have shrapnels in my leg. I still have the pain in my leg. But when you talk about these things with each other, during the tikvot activities, and not just during the tikvot activities, because we're all getting like real friendship.
It's a family.
Yeah, it's a family. Exactly, it's a family. It was for me the first time that I did the snowboard, but it felt like I knew all these guys for years, and it was such an amazing experience. It really gave me a lot of power, and it was the first time, like initially I started to talk about my experience from the rehabilitation, about my story, about the PTSD, and I never shared this with anyone, and it really helped me, to open and to speak up, and it's very helped me, and also all the soldiers, veterans in the organization, to continue our life. And today we're able to support other new injured veterans, just because Simon and Tikva.
Well, Or we want to thank you for sharing your story with us. We want to wish you continued success in your rehabilitation. You should only get stronger and stronger, which I know you are. And hopefully I'll see you this summer in Israel. And just our hearts are with you today and every day, knowing that while it's Yom Hazikaron and it's a hard day for everyone who's impacted, that it affects us every single day, no matter what. And we really appreciate you taking time on such a difficult night to really share with us what happened to you. And hopefully, you know, other people can hear just, it's not only about what happens when you're injured, but it's a long-term thing. It doesn't just stop after at some point, it continues. And as you can see, and everyone can hear from you, you are amazing and so strong. And we're just so grateful that you're here and that you're safe, and you should just continue to do good things in the world.
Thank you so much also for your words. And thank you all for your time and also to hear our story. Thank you so much.
So thank you all. And I'm going to actually speak with Sari now, because most people don't realize this lady behind this whole operation, and even just the name of the organization that she founded, Strength to Strength. People sometimes forget that Sari too was a victim of a suicide bombing. She moved to the US, to Israel, when she was in 2001. And she moved from the US like other people. She gave up her comfortable life. And in 2003, a teenage suicide bomber blew up himself on the Jerusalem bus number 14. She had just gone out with a friend to dinner. You know what teenagers, young people do? You go out to dinner. It was a very normal thing. She was severely injured. But what stands out for me with Sari is she didn't hold resentment. She wasn't hopeless. I've known Sari for years and years, and I've seen her right at the beginning of the recovery, right at the beginning of her journey. And no matter how much she was like still in physical pain, she was out there. And she chose to ask how rather than why. How can I make something out of this situation? She founded Strength to Strength, and it's a global haven for survivors. And Sari, I want to ask you, because part of your mission is to empower people to move forward in a culture of peace. One of my questions is, how do you feel peace and not hate? How is it that you're able to switch that feeling in your brain. I mean, I know that like some of us get slighted by a neighbor, a friend, a roommate, a sibling, and we can't like switch that feeling off. Yet someone who's done the most grievous bodily harm, and not just to you, but to other people, how do you switch that emotion? I'm curious.
So first off, I think that I also have those people that do things and you just get annoyed by them and it happens. But I think that, and especially, when I moved to Israel at the end of 2001, it was after 9/11. And, I was, my office was 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center. And I wasn't there that morning, I overslept. So when I started working and volunteering with victims in Israel and hearing the stories and hearing what people were going through, I didn't completely understand it. I was just there to be an ear or to listen or to help with a program or to something to make people feel that they were being taken care of. And I think that, first of all, I have 2 very strong parents, which instilled in me very much the idea of giving back and kindness and to do good in the world. And I thank them for that, because it's an incredible thing to be brought up in a home like that. But I also think that after the attack happened, I had 2 choices. I could either become the victim that the terrorists wanted and kind of revert inward and not be the person that I was, or I could take that pain and do something positive with it. And I don't want to live my life with hate in me, because that's what that day was all about. That day was all about hate. I want to show the opposite of what that day was all about to people, showing love and kindness. And that's really the beauty of Strength to Strength. I gained so much from the people of Israel. I was taken care of. I say they saved my life. And as Tuli mentioned, I also, every trip in Israel, I go back to Hadassah in Kerem. I visit with the nurses that took care of me. I haven't been there in almost 3 years. July will be my first trip back. But one of my first stops when I get to Jerusalem will be to the hospital to visit the nurses that took care of me. And I usually sit with Dr. Rifkin, who is the head of trauma there. And he usually gives me so much time. I wasn't just a number. I wasn't just somebody that came in and out of the hospital. I'm somebody they know, and I have a personal relationship with them. And I remember the first few times I would come back every year in the hospital, and Hagit, the nurse who took care of me every day, was like, "You're back again?" And it's because I say to her, I want you to know how much I'm grateful that you saved my life and that you took care of me. And so that's what I want to show in the world, not the hate that terrorism perpetuates. And for me, it's really important that message is out there. And in starting the organization, it was the idea that terrorism isn't just Israel's problem, it's a world problem. But we all need to be able to combat that hate. And the only way to do that is together. And so that's why Strength to Strength was started, to bring victims of terrorism, both survivors and bereaved family members, and now we have first responders as well, and bring them together to show that we all might come from different backgrounds, different countries, different religions, but we all share something, an experience that bonds us for life. And I know that wherever I am in the world, if I'm stuck somewhere in a country, I have somebody I can call that's sort of part of my extended family. And we built literally a global peer support group. And that's what the best that can happen from something so horrific, that we're coming together, that we're all there for each other, and we're showing love, because that's what terrorism doesn't want us to do. They want to make us afraid. They want to sort of paralyze us from life. And what we're showing is that our lives are important, and the sacrifices that were made and our loved ones that are no longer here are important. And we need to make sure that we keep their memories alive by moving forward and doing everything we can to make sure that terrorism does not succeed.
Yep, and as Golda Meir famously said, we can only end this hate when they love their children more than they hate ours.
Yes.
And, sometimes that seems so far away, at least in terms of how the Arab world see, or not the Arab world, the haters in the Arab world.
The extremists in the Arab world.
Yeah, see us. And yet your message is so exactly the opposite of that. And I think that's so empowering. And I think that's not just empowering for the survivors, but it's empowering for all of us to hear that, because we sometimes live in a dark world. And it's great to know people like you who are able to give us a shift in perspective and make us rethink our stand on situations. I want to ask you a personal question. Do you feel the process of talking about this, the process of helping others, and the passage of time have helped you, or is that emotion behind the scenes still raw? Like, I know that I've had situations in my life that, like when my daughter was born and the doctor walked in and said those words, like, "Mrs. Samuels, did you do genetic testing?" My daughter's now 14 and I have flashbacks to that moment. And I have to push them out of my mind. So do you still have that raw emotion and you push it out there, or in the passage of time, are you able to distance yourself?
So I think that it's interesting you say that. I think that speaking is very therapeutic. And that doesn't mean that everyone has to speak publicly. I think I feel it's more I have to do it because on that day, my attack, over 100 of us were injured and 17 innocent people were murdered, including everyone seated and standing around me. So when I share my story and I'm speaking, I'm not only speaking for myself, I'm speaking for those 17 innocent people that didn't get to go home to their families that day. And my voice is their voice. So when I speak, I'm keeping their memories alive. And that's a really, for me, I don't want to say an obligation, because sometimes an obligation has a negative connotation to it, but I feel like it's an obligation that I want to have, because they're not here and their lives were just as important. And there's no rhyme or reason why I survived and why they didn't. And I remember that I was in the hospital and the phone was like ringing like crazy and my cell phone was all shattered, but the phone rang and my friend Shayna called and we were talking and she said that she thought that the people that were around me were protecting me for all the good that I had done in the past, all the things I've been involved in, all the charity work that I had done, and that they were protecting me. And that's why I survived. I remember about a few hours later, maybe it could have been a day later, I was on the phone with my rabbi and I told him that. And he said to me, "No, Sarah, you never survived for something for what you did in the past. You always survive for what you're going to do in the future." Wow. And so I think that that's the epitome and the essence of what I'm doing. I believe that I survived for a reason, that I'm here for a second chance, and that I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can while I am still here. I think that it would be really naive for me to say that it doesn't affect me. I think that any of us that have been through a terrorist attack or even traumatic experiences, it's always going to be there, but it's how we cope and move forward. And, whenever there's an attack that happens anywhere in the world, we're all brought back to it. I mean, there's usually like phone calls or WhatsApp messages or text messages or chains going on within our group asking, "Are you okay? What, are you, can I do something?" Because we all know that when something happens, we're all going to be triggered by it. But I think for me over the years, I think that it's become, just the norm that I'm going to have some triggers and I have to just, move forward, and I keep busy and make sure that I'm there to support and that I take care of myself as well. And I think that, as Shayna said perfectly, we didn't ask for this to happen to us. We didn't ask for PTSD. We didn't ask for our physical and psychological injuries, but I also feel that that it's important to take care of those things, because I'm no good to any of the people that we support if I'm not taking care of myself in that way. So, we all deal with things differently and we all take care of ourselves differently, and we all should be doing more self-care. And Shayna definitely knows what I mean when I say that. And I think everybody in the world should be doing more self-care for themselves, because it's just important today with everything that we've all been through over the last few years. But I think that on Yom Hazikaron, especially this week, it's usually the hardest week of the year for me. It's even more difficult than the actual day of my attack. And part of that is probably because I'm not in Israel with everybody on Yom Hazikaron. And part of it is just the enormity of what Yom Hazikaron stands for, that it's not just my attack, it's a collective day of remembrance. And the thousands and thousands of people that have been impacted and their families, it's just much harder to to deal with and to comprehend than the actual day of my own attack. But I also believe that, you know, and I will say this tonight when I speak at an event I'm speaking at, that the scars we have are our badges of courage. And that goes for victims, it goes for soldiers. That's an important key thing to keep in mind, that, you know, we are moving forward and we're dealing with life as it is differently, but our scars are still there, whether you can see them or not, and we're still living life. And that I think has been the underlying message of the speakers today, is that we live life. We don't let terrorism destroy us, and we don't let terrorism try and do the things to us that we would think it would in terms of revenge and other things. We want to make sure that we're living life in a positive way and in a good way to make the world better. And that's, for me, the best that can happen from something so horrific.
Wow, I so love two things you said. What happened to you guys is you wear the badge of courage, because it does take courage. And we thank you for that courage to go out there, to share your stories, to continue living, to be happy, and to throw hate, a big slap by showing love. But I also think you shared something very profound, because so often people are survivors, and sometimes even when we speak with Holocaust survivors, there's a lot of guilt about why me, why did I survive? And your rabbi gave you such incredible chizuk, strength and perspective by saying we didn't survive because of what we did yesterday, but what we can do tomorrow. And we all can do something tomorrow in this world. What a powerful message. Sari, thank you. And I want to have you live at an event in New York, Miami, Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv soon. So lucky that Israel's reopened its borders.
Thank God.
We want to have you to come speak. We want to have you in New York, because I think you share such a powerful message and wisdom way beyond your age, and wisdom you probably gained through a journey you never thought you would go on. But thank you, and thank you for partnering with us. And the name of your organization, Strength to Strength, is not just strength for the survivors, but strength for all of us, with such empowering messages.
And Jody, I just want to thank you guys and thank your organization and all of your team behind you that have put so much into this event the last few years. Giving us a voice and giving us an opportunity to share is one of the most incredible things you can do. And you've given us that, and you've made it that this is something that people can watch now remotely from wherever they are, and they can watch it afterwards, and that we are here, and that we are able to be a voice for other victims that can't share their stories. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of our hearts for really doing this and partnering with us, because we're lucky to have you. And we really appreciate everything you do. And I will be happy to speak anywhere you want me at any time. Mostly in Jerusalem would be my favorite top choice. So I'll be there in July, and I'll look forward to it. And I really want to thank everyone for being here, especially our speakers, who I just have a special place in my heart, but to all the people that have spent time on here today listening, because, you know, you could be doing anything with your time. And the fact that you're here and that you're listening to these stories and you're showing victims and injured soldiers that you care and that we're there for them no matter what, that's priceless. So thank you to everybody, and more tomorrow, right, Jody?
Yes. So on that note, we would love everybody to join us tomorrow. And I really encourage people to share. You can go to JIC New York, JIC Israel. You can find the link on Facebook. Please share with your friends, share with your family, share with your colleagues. These stories should and must and can be heard, because technology makes it so easy. Please share with them. I think sometimes people who don't live in Israel don't get Yom Hazikaron. It's an opportunity to really share. Tomorrow we begin again at 3 p.m. Israel time and 8 a.m. USA time. So, and we have more speakers. Each one has a story, a journey, a message. Don't miss them. And after that, Israel will end Yom HaZikaron with the celebration of Israel independence. So in the afternoon, please join us. But now our program is going to be, I just want to say thank you to all of our sponsors. I'm going to read the list of sponsors, and from there, we're going to play Hatikva. And tomorrow at the end, before we play our tikva, we are also going to have a Tehillim reading, a Tehillim to heal everyone in the world, the sick, the injured, the lonely, the suffering, anybody. And that is sponsored by one of our organizations as well. So that's going to be Abraham's legacy tomorrow with the Tehillim. Thank you, Elena. The base, Michael Levine, Lone Soldier Base by Israel. Fast Pass to Love, Give a Hymn, Jeff Seidel's Jewish Student Center, Jody's Voice, the Israel Christian Nexus Fund, Israel Innovation Fund, Kedma, Kerem House, Kol HaNeshama, Mickey Pal Levine, Route 613, Shir Hadash and Emek, Santon Shul, Tel Aviv Synagogue, Tikva Ot, and We Learn. And each one of you for joining in. We will see you tomorrow. And with that, we're going to hear Hatikva, the national anthem of Israel. And we will see you at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. New York time. One moment as we hopefully switch over.
אח שלי, לגור עם ההורים זו ממש לא בושה. אני לי קוחמן, ובאולימפיאדה האחרונה זכיתי במדליה.
כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומיה, ולפת מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה, עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.